Jennifer Aniston had just wrapped up an afternoon full of smiles and laughter at a charity event. The event, aimed at raising awareness for underprivileged children, had been a resounding success, with hundreds of people coming together to support a cause close to her heart. After the final speeches and photographs, Jennifer stayed behind to thank some of the attendees and meet with a few donors. However, as the final goodbyes were exchanged, a sense of relief washed over her. As the sun began its slow descent, casting a soft golden glow over the bustling streets, Jennifer felt a sense of peaceful contentment settles in. She got in the car to go home. The public image of the calm, smiling Jennifer that everyone admired could now fade into the past. Instead, she was simply a woman who loved simple, ordinary moments. On her way home, she decided to stop by a mall to buy a few things and stroll around to relax. For a brief moment, she was just another person in the crowd, free from the spotlight, enjoying the anonymity that the city could offer. She was dressed very simply, in a sweater and jeans with her sneakers. Her shoes clicked lightly on the polished marble floor. She went to the supermarket to buy some things for her dinner. After purchasing and paying, she strolled around the mall, Jennifer freely soaking in the atmosphere. She passed boutiques with sparkling window displays, trendy cafes, and art installations lining the walkways. The crowd was thinner now. Many of the events in shopping mall goers had already left to continue with their plans for the evening. The time on her watch told her she had just enough to enjoy a bit of window shopping before heading home. Jennifer smiled to herself, appreciating the rare feeling of being unnoticed in a public space. It was hard to remember the last time she had experienced such an ordinary moment, where the only person she was responsible for was herself. She paused at a shop window, showcasing an array of high-end handbags, each one more dazzling than the last. She admired the craftsmanship for a moment, feeling a sense of calm enveloping her. Then, she decides to continue her go. Just then, she saw a sight she could not ignore. Near the entrance to the mall's escalator, a scene caught her attention. An elderly man, in his mid-70s, stood at the base of the escalator. His eyes were wide with confusion, and his body language screamed uncertainty as he looked up at the moving steps with apprehension. He had a weathered face, a well-worn coat draped over his frame, and his shaking hands gripped the rail of the escalator tightly, as though trying to steady himself in a situation that seemed entirely unfamiliar. The man was standing alone, surrounded by a sea of shoppers who were moving seamlessly around him. Most of them were oblivious to his struggle, lost in their own worlds, rushing past him to catch up with the relentless pace of city life. Jennifer's heart instantly went out to him. There was something about the sight of this elderly man, so small against the vast, impersonal world of the mall, that struck a chord deep within her. His face mirrored the anxiety she had seen in her own reflection many times in the past. Feeling lost in a place that was supposed to offer comfort, yet instead felt like a maze of confusion. The escalator, an everyday part of modern life, seemed like an insurmountable obstacle for him. As Jennifer watched, the man took a hesitant step forward but quickly retreated, his face growing more anxious with each passing second. The mall's escalators were a source of endless convenience for the majority of the crowd, but for someone like him, they could be an intimidating challenge. His age, perhaps, and his unfamiliarity with the technology made the situation feel more perilous than it was. Jennifer stood still for a moment, contemplating. She knew she couldn't just walk past him. She was a person who believed in the power of small gestures and the importance of human connection, especially in moments when someone felt lost or out of place. But she also knew that her public image might make some people hesitant to approach her. Many would have simply passed by, assuming that someone else would lend a hand. But Jennifer wasn't like that. Her compassion ran deeper than the smiles and applause of a red carpet appearance. So, without hesitation, she walked toward him, her shoes clicking softly with each step. She took a deep breath, preparing herself to be the person who made the first move. This was, after all, a person in need, someone who deserved kindness, regardless of whether the world was watching or not. The world would often try to define who she was, but moments like these reminded her of her real purpose. She could not just stand by and watch someone struggle in silence. As she approached the elderly man, she offered him a warm, reassuring smile. "Excuse me, as she said, her voice gentle and soothing. "Can I help you with something?" The man looked up, startled at first. His wrinkled face softened slightly as his eyes met hers, but the uncertainty was still there. He looked down at the escalator, then back at Jennifer. I don't know how this works. I've never ridden it," he replied, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear. "Don't worry," she said calmly. "It's a bit tricky if you're not used to it. Let me help." And with that, she gently placed a hand on his arm, guiding him toward the moving steps, her presence offering both physical and emotional support. Jennifer's presence was helping to steady. The moment the elderly man felt her gentle touch on his arm, a flicker of calm washed over him. It wasn't just the physical support, though. It was the simple reassurance that someone cared. His eyes softened, no longer darting nervously around, searching for someone to help him. In that brief exchange, he found something more valuable than just assistance. He found empathy. Jennifer spoke softly as they approached the escalator, her voice a soothing balm that seemed to make everything else fade into the background. "It's really not as complicated as it seems," as she said, her tone light yet confident. "Just take a deep breath and trust the steps to carry you up." She gestured toward the escalator's moving steps, which appeared so intimidating to him just moments ago. The elderly man nodded slowly, though his anxiety was still apparent. Jennifer could see it in his eyes. He was still unsure, still hesitant. It was clear that the sight of the escalator's swift motion had caused him to feel small and vulnerable in it, was already moving too fast. But Jennifer was determined to change that for him, if only for this one moment. She didn't hurry him. She took a step back, allowing him the time to absorb her words and make his decision at his own pace. She didn't rush, and that made all the difference. The mall, with its grand, polished floors and glistening shop window, had become a blur. It was just her and this man, and for once, the pace of the world seemed to slow down. She understood the power of slowing down, of taking the time to really see someone, to connect with them in a way that made them feel heard and safe. "Would you like me to go first?" Jennifer asked with a gentle smile. She could tell that he wasn't sure whether to trust the moving stairs or not, so she offered to step onto the escalator first, to show him that there was nothing to be afraid of. The man's eyes flickered toward her. For a moment, he looked as though he might say something, but instead, he simply nodded, more at ease than before. Jennifer stepped forward, confidently placing one foot on the moving step. She didn't falter, didn't hesitate. And when she looked back, the man followed suit, his hand gripping the rail tightly. "You're doing great," Jennifer encouraged, watching him closely. She knew it wasn't just the act of stepping onto the escalator that mattered. It was helping him regain his confidence, making him feel capable in a world that often left people like him behind. She maintained a steady pace, ensuring that she was close enough for him to feel her presence. With each step, the man seemed to relax a little more, his grip on the rail loosening as he adjusted to the movement beneath his feet. "See," Jennifer said, a grin spreading across her face as she reached the top. "It's not so bad, right?" Her words were light-hearted, but her gaze was warm, filled with understanding. The elderly man, now standing beside her at the escalator, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His shoulders seemed to drop from the tension that had been weighing him down just moments earlier. He smiled, a smile that reached his eyes, a smile that hadn't been there when Jennifer first saw him. It was the kind of smile that made Jennifer's heart warm, because she knew that in just a few moments, she had made a difference in his day, maybe even in his life. "Thank you," the man said, his voice steady now, though still tinged with a hint of emotion. "I wasn't sure if I could do it, but with you here, I think I can face a lot more things now." His words hung in the air for a brief moment, the weight of them settling over Jennifer like a soft, reassuring blanket. She could feel the sincerity in his gratitude, and it made everything worthwhile. "You're very welcome," Jennifer replied, her voice filled with a quiet humility. "Sometimes, all we need is a little help to get through the tough moments. You did it yourself. You just needed someone to remind you that you can." The man nodded, his smile growing wider, and for the first time since she had seen him, he seemed to stand a little taller. As they parted ways, he gave her a grateful nod, and she waved goodbye. Watching him walk away with a renewed sense of purpose, no longer held back by the fear of the escalator, Jennifer stood there for a moment, taking in the scene around her. The mall resumed its usual buzz of activity, the sounds of footsteps and conversation blending into the background. But for her, the world had paused. It wasn't about the event or the glamour of the city anymore. It was about this small, quiet act of kindness, this fleeting connection that had made a world of difference for one person. As she walked away, Jennifer couldn't help but smile to herself. It wasn't the grand gestures that made the most impact. Sometimes it was the small moments. Moments when you could truly see someone and offer them what they needed most. Understanding, kindness, and the simple belief that they were not alone in the world. In a city of millions, Jennifer had taken the time to notice the man who needed her help. In doing so, she had reminded herself of the power of those quiet, meaningful connections that can change lives in ways that the world may never fully see. Jennifer continued her walk through the mall, but her mind kept drifting back to the elderly man. The image of his frail hands gripping the rail of the escalator, the hesitation in his eyes, and the gradual relaxation that was engraved in mind with her long after the moment had passed. She couldn't help but think about how often people like him, those who had lived through decades of change, were made to feel invisible or helpless in a world that was always moving faster than they could keep up. Jennifer's heart swelled with empathy. As someone who had lived most of her life in the public eye, she had experienced moments of weakness, of helplessness, of loneliness in the great big world. Like the man before her, she too had felt the weight of helplessness. It was the fear of being alone, of not having someone there when you needed help. She helped him just as, on occasion, she had wished for someone to offer a kind word, a helping hand, when the weight of the world felt a little too heavy. Her phone buzzed in her bag, snapping her out of her reverie. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen, seeing a message from her assistant, reminding her about tomorrow's plans. She had completely lost track of time. With a soft sigh, Jennifer tucked the phone back into her bag and glanced around the mall. But even though the moment had passed, it had planted a seed in Jennifer's heart. She had given him a small gift, her time, her kindness, and in return, she had received something far greater, a renewed understanding of the profound impact that simple acts of compassion could have. As Jennifer made her way toward the mall exit, she passed a group of children, laughing as they ran down the hall, their faces bright with excitement and wonder. For a moment, she watched them, marveling at how carefree they seemed, their innocence shining through. She remembered her own childhood, the moments when everything felt simple and pure before the complexities of adulthood set in. It struck her that perhaps this was why she had always been drawn to helping others. She had never lost that sense of wonder, that desire to make the world a little better, one small act at a time. She reached the exit of the mall and stepped out into the cool evening air. The city lights flickered as the sun finally dipped below the horizon. For the first time in a while, Jennifer felt deeply at peace. She has made a difference in someone's life today, and that, to her, was enough. She walked towards her car. Jennifer wasn't sure if she would ever see that man again, but what she did today was absolutely right. With that thought, she got into her car, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Jennifer drove through the quiet streets, the sound of her engine almost melodious against the bustling night scene of the city. She rolled down the window a little, and Jennifer felt the cool breeze blowing around her, carrying the smell of fresh rain and the promise of a new day. She made a commitment to herself that night. No matter what the future holds, she will always be open to the moments of human connection that make life truly meaningful. She would continue to help, even when no one was looking. She would continue to show up for those who needed a little light in their day, just like she had done for the older man. In doing so, she knew she would make a difference, not only in his life, but in her own life and in the lives of others she had yet to meet. It was about connecting with others, sharing moments of vulnerability, and how helping someone, even in the smallest way, can have a lasting impact on their life. Have you ever witnessed someone facing a vulnerable moment? How did you respond? Did you step in to help, or did you hesitate, unsure of what to do? Moments like these challenge us to reflect on the small acts of kindness we can perform every day. Simple gestures like holding the door for someone, saying a kind word, or even just taking a moment to listen. Think about the last time you helped someone without expecting anything in return. Did it brighten their day and yours? Small acts can lead to big changes, and it's never too late to start. Take a moment today to help someone, whether it's a stranger in need or a loved one who needs extra care. Be a light in someone's dark moment, one small, meaningful step at a time. Share your own stories of kindness, whether you are the giver or the receiver, in the comments. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for more great videos.